Welcome back, folks. I'm Dan.
And I'm Joe. And folks, today we have a great video for you. And today we're going to talk about Dan a very very popular subject. And go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I thought that was my cue. We're going to talk about life in a Thai prison. And just for your information, folks, neither Joe or I have ever been to a Thai prison, nor do we want to go. But we've both read a lot and we both know people who have been.
Well, let me just say this: I've never been incarcerated, nor do I want. Now, I went to a Thai prison years ago to visit somebody, and I do know two people personally that have been in Thai jails. So, but before we get into this video, please like, subscribe, share, and bang the notification bell. It helps us, it helps you, it helps the algorithm. And Dan, this subject, I'm going to introduce it, Dan, as this. Welcome to the nightmare of Thai prison. Dan, I want you to imagine a place so vile, so miserable, with blood on the floor, that death feels like an escape. Well, welcome to the Thai prisons. This is a graveyard for humanity. And we're going to dive in this hellhole. Yeah, this reality of a hellhole where torture, possible, and of course, alleged corruption. We want to say that alleged corruption and despair reign. So please, folks, stick around for this. I do, like Dan had mentioned, we do know people that have been there and have told us. As a matter of fact, I almost had an interview on here, but that person does not want to put their face on YouTube. Hey, which is understandable. So Dan, go ahead, Dan. Tell us why this matters, this topic.
All right. A lot of people point fingers at the United States for mass incarceration for crimes like drugs. Thailand also does that. There are over 370,000 people in Thai prisons right now. 1/6 in the world for prison population, and they cram them into spaces that are barely suitable for animals. If you think, imagine this. Imagine sleeping in a big room with about at least 50 other guys, and you're side by side, shoulder to shoulder.
And Dan, just so that you know, and for the viewer, there are a total of 148 prisons in Thailand. And go ahead, Dan.
No, I didn't know. I didn't know it was 148.
There's 148 actual prisons. So, like you said, there's a lot of overcrowding, and there was an ex-inmate, Reese Hurl, was thrown inside a Thai prison on a drug-related offense. He described his first night in the Thai prison as the lowest point of his life. This comes from the source is National Geographic. He was sleeping on a hard floor with a water bottle as his pillow, and he said,
"Yeah,
it really destroyed his soul, and men were sleeping on the floor like sardines in a tin can." So
that's correct. By the way, one book I recommend, Damage Done by Warren Fellows. He passed away a few years ago, but I know his son, Adrian Simon, who did a book of his own called Milk Blood and Unbreaking the Girl. All three are good books, and I recommend all three. And I'll talk about that later. Now, as the philosopher Albert Camus once said, life is absurd, a meaningless struggle against an indifferent universe. Thai prisons strip that absurdity here. Existence isn't just pointless, it's a cruel joke. To live is to suffer without purpose, a Sisyphean boulder of pain rolled uphill only to crash back down in filth and blood. What does it mean to be human when humanity itself is crushed underfoot?
That's the philosophical take. It is also, Dan, I think also one way to describe a Thai prison, it's a meat grinder of misery. Picture this, Dan. Over 370,000 inmates stuffed in the cells, built according to another source we have. This is also National Geographic. Built for 270. The prisons are built for no more than 217,000. So technically, as of 2020, the Thai prisons were 172% over capability. This tells you something. Some of the individual prisons are 224% over occupied. So you're not just crowded, you're packed like rotting sardines. You're sleeping on top of each other, and then these men or these women, they're trying not to touch each other's sweaty bodies, and some of these people have lice all over their bodies due to the condition. And Dan, give us a shocking fact. Tell us a shocking fact.
Oh, you mean about death row? Oh, actually, no. Klong Prem, which is dubbed the Bangkok Hilton, it has over 20,000 inmates crammed in a space you can't even stretch your legs without kicking a dying man in the face. And most of the people that are incarcerated in Thailand are drug offenders, at least 2/3.
Right.
If you even move wrong, you have to move. It's affecting the whole row of people. If you're laying down, you just move. You have to move. Everyone else has to move too. It's impossible. Just you only have a few inches between yourself and the guy sleeping next to you.
So, and what about there was a death row surge in 2022? Death row spiked by 14%. So pretty much 510 people were awaiting execution.
Yeah,
Shocking.
59 were women. Yeah,
Yeah.
59 were women, and mostly for drugs. But you're not just locked up. You're something else about Thai prisons. I mean, when you're executed, once you're fully convicted or your appeals have been exhausted or whatever, you only get 2 hours of notice before you are executed.
Wow.
2 hours. So people who are on death row, they never know when it's going to be their day.
So Dan, I got something for you here. I want to focus this next little portion on foreigners trapped in the hellhole of the prison, of the Thai prison. Over 14,000 foreigners from 103 different countries are stuck in the Thai prison. That's 4.6% of the total prison population. A lot of these tourists get no embassy help or no mercy. Now, for those of you out there watching, yeah, a lot of these foreigners may be guilty. Okay, well, maybe they committed a serious crime. So let me ask you this, Dan, this philosophical question. Now, depending on the crime, maybe it's a drug offense. It could be a sexual assault. I don't know. But Dan, should these prisoners still be treated humanely and have human rights? It sounds like a simple question, right? But some people, believe it or not, would have no mercy at all.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, no matter where in the world, I was never big on the idea of locking people up for things like drugs, because drugs is something people always ask for, and that's a nonviolent offense. Now, get this. I might be considered inhumane when I say I have no problem seeing murderers, rapists, pedophiles, even scam artists and all that. When they're laying those conditions, I have no regard for them.
Pedophiles, murderers, and rapists, yeah, I get where you're coming from. Scamming is wrong. It depends. What about, I want to give you a philosophical take on this. Justice or vengeance? Plato said, actually, before I get to what Plato said, here's the question. What is justice? When it becomes a machine of mass suffering. What is justice? Plato argued the state should mirror the soul's harmony, but many critics believe, and many human rights organizations believe, and again, we love Thailand, but Thai prisons reflect a grotesque inversion of nothing but vengeance and a brutal order of suffering, of making the prisoners suffering.
Right, and Nietzsche might call this will to power gone mad. A system not to rehabilitate, but to dominate, to crush the weak in an iron heel. Is this punishment or society's confession of its own moral rot?
And again, people have varying opinions on this. To me, it depends on the crime. If you get, for example, if you get thrown in jail for drugs or maybe gambling, okay, maybe it's against the country's law, but should you be brutalized? I would say no. If you scam an old lady or old grandma out of her life savings, yeah, you should face some severe justice. You're a pedophile. I'm sorry.
Yeah, those people, like I say, if I see someone who robbed an old lady out of her pension or all that, and he's sleeping on the floor rotting in a Thai prison, I don't care. Hell with him. Let him rot. A pedophile, let him rot. Brutal murderers, depending on the circumstance, of course. Let him rot. Rapists, same. I don't care for those people.
Well, I've heard some people say Thai prisons, they're all a stinking, rotting tomb. Some even said they've slept with the dead. Cells are mass graves for the living. This is Billy Moore, a British gentleman. Of course, there was a movie about him on Netflix. Matter of fact, he has a YouTube channel. He is an ex-inmate. And when he described Chiang Mai Central Prison, He was the one that made that quote: "Cells are mass graves for the living." This is how he described being in Chiang Mai Central Prison. Dan, so what do you think of that?
It's similar to what Warren Fellows described in Damage Done. In fact, he said when in his early incarceration, he went to what they call the dark rooms, one of the dark rooms, a punishment
Yeah.
room. He said someone got stabbed to death in that cell, and it took like 1 or 2 days to actually move the body, so they had to sleep alongside that body for like at least 24 hours. Ugh.
I've heard prisons. I talked to a guy I knew, and I'm not going to say his name or where he's from, to protect his anonymity, his identity. He said he would wake up and there were sometimes rats eating at his feet, gnawing at his feet, and
Yes. What kind of
and
rats? Too? It's not those little rats you see on the street. It's those big ones that are like the size of small cats.
Dan, there's no mattress. Some say it's just cold piss soaked concrete.
You can buy, from what I understand, you can buy like small mattresses. They're pretty thin though. Yeah, you can buy them as well as pillows, but often you got to be careful which inmate you buy it from because they're often embedded with stuff like lice and scabies and bed
Yeah,
bugs.
yeah. And again, I'm only going off, like I said, I can't even remember the prison I was at, the jail I was at years ago visiting somebody. And that was enough to get me. I'm going to behave myself. I don't want to end up here. Dan, a fecal nightmare. Tell us about toilets, Dan. In the
From what I understand, whether it's 40 or 80 men or whatever, there's only one toilet, and that's in the corner. That's a squat toilet, a squat name toilets. And but imagine this. Imagine you have to walk over a bunch of people, just to use the toilet.
Yeah,
That's
no,
just and
um, dude, was this guy Regsman Rome, an ex. That's his name, believe it or not. An
I
ex-prisoner
can
said
never. Yeah.
waste management is so bad. You're waddling through ankle-deep sewage just to eat. Sometimes flies swarm your food. Um,
Yeah. Oh
you know,
yeah.
Dan,
Warren
is this
Fellows.
true? Woman gets sanitary pads twice a year.
I
Two
don't know.
packs.
I heard that. Yeah, they're not provided sufficiently. I know that much because I read a few books of women who did time in Thai prisons. Holly Dean Johns, I think her name was, an Australian, and also Sandra Gregory, who had that book "Forget You Had a Daughter." Yeah, they told me some. They said similar stories. Another one was "Waking Up in Asia," I think it was called, an
This
American who.
this is also according to the Thomas Reuters Foundation. This is an excerpt from a December 2021 expose article. That Thai inmates are forced and threatened into making fishing nets that the prisoners sell for export. Basically, prisoners are told that work is compulsory, but they are paid way below, obviously, the national minimum wage. Dan, around this was as December 2021. They get $3. I mean, not $3, 3 baht. Excuse me, 3 baht a day for doing this kind of work. And while some inmates don't get paid at all, if they don't meet the harsh quota of 5 nets a week, they're tortured by the prison guards. Allegedly, folks. Allegedly.
Well, it's not just prison. It's not just nets. And by the way, if this gives you any relief that as foreigners are not forced to work, but Thais are. And it's not just fishing nets, umbrellas, or whatever else the prison factory is making. You have to make the Thai prisoner has to make a quota, and if they don't, they'll get brutalized. They'll get beaten.
And according to two former inmates, and this is from a guy I knew, he pretty much told me the same thing. This is from an article on coconuts back in 2017. The wake up time, pretty much 6 a.m. Obviously, they take a shower or however they can. They try to scoop out some water from a bowl. 7 a.m. the prisoners have breakfast. 8 a.m. pretty much everyone gathers in line to sing the Thai national anthem. And then like I'm gonna say the Thai inmates, I guess, are sent to work till 3 p.m. because I heard the same thing as you. Foreigners aren't forced to work. I guess for Thai, like you said, Thai inmates all work is mandatory. Because my friend told me he wasn't forced to work. Man, I don't know if that's changed or not, but I'm just going off his word on that. Sometimes they gotta go make shoes, find paper bags, and like I said, the pay as I heard it is 3 baht a day.
I didn't know it was 3 baht a day. I thought 3 baht an hour, but still, it doesn't surprise me at all. It is forced labor. They also have other bits like that. Bangkwang has a pig farm, and just anything that can be done. But it is forced labor, and I think among the reasons why the foreign prisoners are not forced to work is because at least they have embassies that can ensure some human rights, at least some. But Thai
Now,
inmates, they don't have
now,
any of that.
now, some folks have said, ex-prisoners have said, you get 49 baht a day, about $1.50 for meals. It buys you pretty much a bowl of gray slop, rotting fish heads, maggots in the rice, and some kind of mystery vegetable. A lot of people starve. One inmate found a human tooth in his soup, and the prison guards laughed. One of the prison guards said in English, "Extra protein." So,
Yeah, Warren Fellows saw rocks in his like in the prison food. He would find rocks sometimes inside of it, small pebbles. Have to spit them out. People would crack their teeth. And speaking of which, yeah, if you're gonna starve in a Thai prison unless you have money to buy food at the
so
canteen
let me
or hire.
ask you. Let me ask you this question, Dan. Talk to us about healthcare. What about healthcare in a Thai?
Sorry, what health? I didn't know it existed. It barely exists. If you're sick, tough luck. Not only are the prisons understaffed with medical people, but they don't care anyways. I mean, there are very few beds. They're very scarce with medication. In fact, if you have mental disorders, oh, good luck getting treatment for that. No, it's and let me think what else. If you get tuberculosis, that'll spread like wildfire. It if someone gets sick, every bunch of other people get sick, and even those who do get a hospital bed, they're far from they're far from ideal.
Well, some human rights organizations, this is in 2023 reports, they confirmed of a lot of Thai prison inmates of untreated infections that basically turn minor cuts into like gangrene, limbs blackened, and some limbs even falling off, some of your body parts even falling off while you're still alive. It sounds crazy,
Yeah,
but
because
what's the
a lot of people
philosophy?
well, before I tell you the philosophical part, a lot of people get gangrene. I think it's from heroin addiction because a lot of people share needles in Thai prison.
Oh yeah, yeah.
HIV is very
Drugs
high in Thai
are
prison.
big as a big black market. They sneak into the prisons, and also getting decent kind of food is on the black market. So if anyone has a little money, they'll try to get some quality of food. And look, just like in any Western prison, I'm sure there's corruption. And like you said, all these Thai prisons, most of them have over capability. Their capability of so, for example, like we talked about 20 minutes ago, so with overcrowding, can imagine medical treatment and stuff, getting food is, and if they do have any doctors and medics, they're overworked or they can't. They don't have the funding or the proper medication.
Right. And they don't care anyways. Look, and one other bit. Your teeth are inevitably going to rot out because the only drinking water that's good is bottled water. That's it. And a lot of people who can't afford bottled water have to drink that filthy tap water. I'm not going to get into the details for that one, but let's say one common complaint is teeth rot out in Thai prisons. Now, as for the philosophical take, Rene Descartes saw the body as a vessel for the mind, but in Thai prisons, the body becomes its own cage. A decaying shell trapping a screaming soul. Schopenhauer's pessimism rings true here. Life is suffering, and these conditions amplify it into a grotesque symphony. If existence is pain, what's the point of enduring when the flesh itself betrays you?
Well, I heard one guy I knew that was an ex Thai prisoner. He called the prison guards sadists in uniforms. These guards, some say torture is even a welcome gift. Guards greet you with leg irons, 3 months chained like an animal. Some prisoners are. They get
All
swords.
of, all of them are.
Yep.
Uh, every inmate for the first 3 months has to wear shackles, and not the kind that are locked, but the kind that are welded on.
Well,
So you
yeah, I
can't
said some because I never the other one I talked, I didn't mention anything about him. So try to be, yeah, but you may be right on that. If you
yeah.
if you complain, they'll beat you, possibly, allegedly. Uh, human rights reports from 2023 say guards use bamboo rods to crack skulls open for disobedience. Blood pools under you while they laugh. One guard bragged about breaking an inmate's spine for stealing a cigarette, left him paralyzed, and he wanted to, basically defecate on himself in his cell.
That's just plain horrible. Unfortunately, it's not just people in authority. A lot of people don't know about the blue shirts. Do you know about the blue shirts, Joe?
Yeah.
Tell our viewers what the blue shirts are.
You can go ahead because I have something I want to add in corruption here in a minute.
Okay. All right. The blue shirts are inmates, but are trustees, and basically they do all the guards' dirty work. The guards are well aware that they're outnumbered, at least 50 to 1. And so they hire blue shirts, the better behaved inmates, to go and carry out work, to enforce, to inform, and sometimes they turn a blind eye to tormenting, beatings, and the whole bit. It's in fact a lot of inmates hate the blue shirts more than the actual guards.
One thing I want to add real quick is pretty much every day except Sunday, prisoners that they can receive visitors if they're lucky enough, and when they get called to the reception area, sometimes they have to wait up to an hour to go through the screening process where they get to see and talk to relatives or friends, usually for about the most 20 minutes, from what I was told. Visitors are not allowed to obviously bring anything to give to the prisoners, but they can shop at the prison store and buy whatever their loved ones need. So there is a prison store. And so there is that's interesting.
Yeah, they used to be allowed to bring food. It used to be that one could buy a food from the outside and bring it. But I guess there were too many cases of smuggling or something happened and it stopped being allowed. Now you have to buy from within the prison. You have to buy within the prison canteen for.
And here's the housing system. Many inmates are grouped by hometown. So say you come from a part of Isan, they group them together. So a lot of how they house them and they put them in cells. If the prisoners are in the same province or community, they stay together.
I never knew that one. That's a new one on me, but okay. All right.
I read this. I got that point out of an article on coconuts.
Yeah. By the way, Joe, can you tell our viewers about corruption or prey?
Well, bribes, say allegedly, there's alleged bribes going on. If you want a blanket, basically it could cost a prisoner 500 baht. You want some even will pay for their life. One ex-prisoner said and didn't want to be identified in one of the articles I have here. He wanted to live another day if you give the guard 1,000 baht to the right, 1,000 baht to the right guard. And now technically there's not supposed to be any cash transactions. So again, a guard. This one article I read, a guard once saw a dying man's medicine. Sold a dying man's medicine back to him for double the money. So, when it comes to Thai prisons in the corruption index, it ranks 101st globally.
So, first out of what? 197.
I don't have that in front. I don't have it in front of me. But I got this this one was off a National Geographic article. So whatever that index is globally. So.
Corruption perception index, and the higher the number, the worse it is. The ones that ranked number one, I think it was Singapore, Japan, Denmark, and some others. But the higher the number, that means the more corrupt it is.
So Dan, tell us about some medieval cruelty going on inside the prisons.
Okay. You definitely don't want to get sent to solitary. I mean, solitary is already a dreadful thought in any type of jail, but in Thailand, it can mean being 1 meter by 1 meter, and for Americans, 3 feet by 3 feet. And that is just pure torture and just absolutely nothing to do but stare at the walls. It's the most, also, that's officially, but unofficially, they'll put you in the sun or make you stare at the sun. They've all kinds. I mean, they'll give you beatings like with a wire whip, and for small things like spilling water. Or just you name it. In fact, there's an old game they used to play. It's outlawed now, but they used to put an unpopular prisoner in a rattan ball,
right,
and move it around with nails that were through it, and they'd give it to an elephant. And the elephant would kick it around, eventually lose patience and crush the ball.
Now, I want to just bring this up real quick. Now, the couple of guys I knew that were in the prison, I'm not going to say where they're from, what country. Uh, I want to bring up embassy as far as embassy support. And again, I've heard different things. Some embassies are, I guess, better than others. As far as the U.S. embassy, I think they do pay the prisoner a visit. I don't know for sure. And like I said, the two guys I knew, and I don't want to say what country they're from, but one of them did tell me the embassy did once bring them toiletries and did bring them some cleanings, some sanitary items to help them stay clean and things like that, some water. So every embassy, I'm gonna guess, is different. Like I said, I hope I never find out. So I don't plan on breaking the law. So in case every embassy, I guess, is different. I'm not an expert on that. I'm sure most embassies will check on their citizen, or I don't, that one I'm not an expert on, but
Some do, some don't. The United States, they're okay. France is, from what I understand, France is the best Western country as far as checking on its citizens. They're known to take good care of their citizens who are locked up abroad.
nah.
Speaking of France, there's a philosophical take. Michel Foucault saw prison as theaters of power where guards become gods over broken men. But what happens when power corrupts absolutely, as Lord Acton warned? These sadists aren't just enforcers, they're Nietzschean. Ubermenschen, how is it? Reveling in a morality beyond good and evil. If might makes right, then Thai prisons are a shrine to the death of ethics.
Well, what about Dan inmate hierarchy? All prisons around the world, there is some kind of structure, some chain, as we would say in the military, chain of command. There is an inmate hierarchy, and it could be extremely brutal. Brutal gangs.
Okay, as you said earlier, which I didn't know, inmates do form houses by hometown, so I guess they're housed together. But
Yes.
if you're not with a clique, if you're a Thai, then you're easy prey. Now, from what I understand, foreigners is different. Foreigners typically stick with their nationality, but if there aren't many people of their nationality, then they just form an alliance with whoever. And sometimes inmates, foreign inmates, despite conflicts, will stick together once they learn they're going to get preyed on by Thai inmates. But sometimes, yeah. Well, one thing though that's less common in Thai prisons, rape is a lot less common than in Western prisons, but still it does happen. And yeah, you're less likely to get it if you're a Westerner, but still, it's no
Well,
guarantee of safety.
well, violence is a lot of violence. Some say it's a daily bloodbath where cells can be war zones. Pretty much in a jail cell, 100 men and one bucket of water. So, and like you said, you commented a little bit ago about the sexual assault in Thai prisons. Doorless stalls means no hiding from predators. An ex-inmate who commented off the record saw a man raped to death with a broomstick, and guards turned away and said, "Sort it out yourself." So, are foreigners prime targets? Again, out of all the Thai prisoners, about over 14,000 of them are foreigners. So some, like you said, maybe foreigners get messed with, maybe they don't. Some the ones I knew, so they really didn't get messed with. But again, I've heard other documentaries and articles I've read. Some said they were punching bags till they psychologically broke down.
I've heard mixed things on this one.
Yeah,
I've heard
so
that foreigners
again, I don't know. Yeah,
aren't typically targets for violence, but for bribery for sure. I mean, particularly the guards will try to find every way they can to get money out of a foreigner. So they'll torture them in other ways, but violence, not so much. And I mean, even Warren Fellows complained that even Warren Fellows, although he had plenty of complaints, he did say that foreigners were a lot less subject to violence than other Thai inmates.
yeah. So what is the philosophical take? The state of nature here at a Thai prison.
Well,
What did
Thomas
Hobbes?
Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes and the state of nature. Hobbes called life without order, nasty, brutish, and short. And Thai prisons are as Levanthian unbound. Sorry, did I say it right? Leviathan unbound.
Leviathan.
Yeah, strip away society, and this is humanity's raw essence. A war of all against all, where survival is a brutal pact with chaos. Are we civilized or just beasts in chains waiting to snap? And I've wondered that too, because people who I had seen as civilized before, once they got incarcerated, they broke down completely and they turned inside out in more ways than one. And I thought that could happen to anybody. People that we think have it all together now, they could
And,
completely break.
and obviously, every prison around the world, most of them, I should say, and obviously, you got prisons like in Norway and Sweden are a lot better.
Yeah.
But I would say most prisons around the world is a level of corruption. Pretty much, look, you have no money, you have no life, man. Uh, you know, that's the bottom line. So one guy couldn't pay for whatever reason, and he allegedly found his eyes gouged out. Some have had tongues cut, and again,
And
you
the
know,
guy died though. Luckily, the guy died after. Ugh. Just imagine living that way the rest of. Oh, no way.
you know, the cost of living, pretty much allegedly everything is for sale. And again, this is allegedly, folks. We're not there. I've heard. Like I said, I talked to the two guys I knew. I've read interviews. I've watched documentaries. There have been reports where guards auction off VIP spots for cash. A rich inmate bribed his way to a fan. Others baked alive in 100 degree Fahrenheit heat with a
That's about
skin
37 Celsius, folks. Yeah.
37. Some guards, allegedly earn extra money in bribes, because maybe their salary's not enough.
Yeah, and typically, and the foreign inmates with a bit of money, they typically get a cell to themselves where, I mean, not to themselves, but amongst each other. So instead of being packed like sardines, there's maybe 10 to a cell, while others are like 40 or 50 to a cell.
Well, a good philosophical takedown on this is the market of mortality. Marxists saw capitalism as a system where everything has a price, even human dignity. So you're seeing forms of Marxism in these Thai prisons. In Thai prisons, survival could turn into a commodity. Basically, if you have your chances of survival are way up. Life itself can be for sale, but what's left of your soul, if you believe in a soul, psychologically, you're damaged. What is left? This is could be an existential existence. So it's a marketplace. A Thai prison can be a marketplace where ethics die, and only the wealthy cheat death.
Oh, now that you mention it, Adrian Simon, in his book Milk Blood, he mentions how what his father was like after he got out. He was permanently damaged the rest of his life.
I can imagine.
Yeah, he would. I mean, even Warren Fellows admitted it himself in Damage Done that there were always reflections of his mind. For example, if he hears a flag flutter in the background, he thought of the flags on the walls of Bang Kwang prison. If he'd see certain symbols, whatever, he'd get flashbacks. But Adrian Simon was saying, his son was saying that Warren was talking to himself or talking to objects, just going completely mad. And I'm not going to lie, I don't know how different I would be if I was put in those circumstances.
Well, Dan brings us to the last portion of this. The next subject, we're going to continue on some real life stories. And again, a couple of the people like I told you in this video, I'm not going to identify them. Screams from the abyss, and Billy Moore woke up one night to a dead body beside him, and flies inside the dead body's mouth, and the stench from the dead body was literally gagging him. He also said he slept next to a transgender inmate for safety after hearing screams all night. So he allegedly saw a man stabbed 30 times over a cigarette, blood sprayed to the walls, and the guards didn't even blink an eye. Dan?
Oh, here's one that Adrian Simon mentioned in his book that was not Damage Done. Warren Fellows saw a guy in the prison yard, get beaten to death. A Thai Muslim and a Thai Buddhist were fighting over, I think, 10 baht. They were arguing who it was. The Thai Muslim picked up an object, bashed the guy's head in, bludgeoned him to death, and blood squirted all over the place, including on Warren. You know what Warren said? He said,
What's that?
I hate to see what you do for $1. You know,
Yeah, folks. So, Dan, what is the philosophical take? The philosophical take is the witness to suffering. What does that do philosophically and psychologically?
well, Sartre, if that's how you say his name, Sartre, said, hell is other people, but here, hell is watching them break. These stories aren't just tales, they're mirrors of our own fragility. To hear of such pain is to confront our own existence. Do we turn away because it's unbearable or because it's too close to who we might become? I've wondered too, because sometimes some stories were just so unbearable, I had to put down the book or for a bit and say, this is just too much. But I think how close common people are to ending up that way. If all they do is decide to take drugs or make one bad decision, and it's strange when that part of society is so close to you, and yet so many are oblivious to it.
Well, some have suffered so bad inside the prison that some would say death row or to die is a lottery ticket. Some people just want to die just to get out of this hell on earth. Some who've been in Thai prison for years or survived it said there's years of maggots on your body, beatings, and for some inmates, rape. In an article I read for this video, one inmate begged for an execution. He said, "I can't take the smell of my own rot anymore." Suicide outpaces executions. Hundreds hang themselves yearly, choosing rope over this daily prison torture. Dan.
That's why they shackle you for the first 3 months, because they know you're going to be completely broken for the first 3 months. They know a lot of inmates will try suicide, so they shackle you for those first 3 months to make sure you don't commit suicide.
Yeah, some say it's just some say death's not the punishment. Staying alive is the punishment, and it's to talk about this and to read about this. It goes to show. And I'm thinking right now, I'm living a pretty good, comfortable life. And I'm sitting in an AC condo right on the beach, and then at the same time there are other people suffering. And again, maybe some depending on the crime, folks, depending on your outlook or our outlook, maybe depending on the crime, they deserve this kind of suffering. But again, maybe there's a lot of crimes that aren't deserving of this kind of suffering. So with that being said, Dan, give us our philosophical take. The mercy of nothingness.
Okay, Epicurus argued that death is nothing to fear, merely the end of sensation. In Thai prisons, life is endless sensation. Is endless sensation, agony, stench, terror, and much worse. If death is oblivion, then it's a liberation from this eternal now. It's a void kinder than flesh's torment. Is it cowardice to choose suicide or not? Seriously speaking, if I knew I was going to suffer like that the rest of my life, I would see death as a liberation.
Well, in conclusion, as we close out this video, Dan, do people need to wake up and act? Thai prisons, many human rights organizations and critics have said Thai prisons aren't jails. Some human rights organizations have called them blatant slaughterhouses, where over 370 people are tortured daily while the world looks away. Some say this isn't justice; it's the genocide of the living. So, Dan, what is the call to action?
Well, before I answer it, genocide of the living, that's not I would say that's an inaccurate statement.
Again, I'm just making a quote. I'm again, maybe some people, in some people's view, some people deserve this suffering. Maybe there's a rapist in there, or a murderer, or a pedophile. But what I'm saying is, again, there is a ethical, moral issue where some people say, regardless, this shouldn't be done to anybody. And I'm not saying the answer is easy.
Okay, now my personal view is to stop locking people up for things like drugs or nonviolent offenses where others are not harmed. That's just my opinion. This isn't just Thailand. This is worldwide. I think there'd be a lot greater chance of rehabilitation and reform I don't think the conditions would be as bad, or if they remained as bad, at least it wouldn't be as crowded. And like I say, if I committed a very heinous crime and ended up in those circumstances, I'd know in the back of my mind that I kind of deserved it. But if I was caught with a substance or a product or something, or I just said something wrong and ended up there, I wouldn't feel I deserved it.
So Dan, what do you think the call to action should be? What is the call to action?
I'm not the one to answer this. There's human rights groups that have been trying to make changes, been talks about reforming within Thailand, but this is a Thai problem, and I don't feel it's my place at the
Yeah,
end.
and
I
again,
suggested what I suggested, but yeah.
I like on when we do videos, we want to talk about everything and anything, but there's certain things we're not going to talk about in this video. And again, it is a Thai problem, and I understand Dan's reluctance to not go there. But again, there is some human rights groups that are fighting this. Amnesty International and others, and I don't always agree with Amnesty International, but they have an interesting quote. They said, "Don't let these souls die forgotten." Or I think it's Amnesty International or a group called FIDH. Well, I think it's FIDH, so I don't want to misquote somebody there. So don't let these souls die forgotten. Next time you think of a prison, folks, don't think of it as just a timeout. In certain parts of the world, in Thailand, some will say it's a death sentence you serve while you're alive. So,
And I'll say I want to say a quote from Immanuel Kant. Kant demanded we treat humanity as an end, never a means. Yet here, humans are tools for suffering. To know this and to do nothing is to share the guilt. Silence is complicity. If we're rational beings, our duty is to act, to lift the veil of horror, and to demand a world where existence isn't a curse.
that being said, folks, we went a little long, but we're just trying to let you know what goes on in the world. And with that being said, please leave your comments. Let us know what you think. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and bang the notification bell.
All right, folks, you have a great day or night wherever you are.
All right, take care, folks.